Greetings YouTube, this is Western Kansas Prepper here with a video response to Gunguru's 2012 video on HSTF, ammunition sales and elections, just sort of some of his thoughts on recent events. And Gunguru, I like your videos. You make some good ones that I've learned from. You're knowledgeable particularly about guns. Surprise, surprise there, since that's your handle. Anyway, I like your HSTF room video and some others. I've commented on a couple, but on this last one, you started talking politics, I guess, and that's always gets people stirred up and maybe wanting to argue with you. So I made this response, and it's not really just directed at you. I'm not trying to pick on you, Gunguru, but I've heard a lot of Republicans these days make this statement that Barack Obama is, and this was your words, legitimately the worst president we've ever had in the United States. Do I think that is a fair characterization of Mr. Obama? No, it is not. And I don't say this to be defending Obama. I think he sucks too. I think Bush sucked. They both got us in a lot of debt. And there's been a lot of problems that didn't need to happen. But I used to defend Bush against this same claim with some of my Democratic friends that wanted to say he was the worst president we've ever had. It appears that people just have a short historical memory in this country. And, it seems like we have a memory maybe 20 years or so. Is Obama the worst president we've had in 20 years? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it was Bush. I don't know. They're both, like I say, they both sucked. But ever, no. So that doesn't really do justice to history and some of the truly awful presidents we've had in this country. So for your consideration here, I'm going to present these gentlemen. And this guy here is Franklin Pierce, and he's my choice for the 5th worst president of all time. He was very ineffectual. He was an alcoholic who died of cirrhosis of the liver. He had a lot of tragedy in his life. His kid died in a train crash on his way to becoming president at the White House, which was truly tragic. But he was a very ineffectual leader. He was the only president to ever, or one of the only presidents ever, to not receive his party's nomination as sitting president for his re-election bid. They said, you know what, no thanks, we're good, we'll go with somebody else. And they actually went with one of the other people on my list here. But he waffled around on some issues, especially the Kansas-Nebraska Act in the 1850s. He made some concessions to Southerners, but then he didn't really solve any of the problems either. So he did agitate the South a little bit for not very good reason. But again, he also was the first president to hire a bodyguard, and this was for another good reason, because he was despised by everyone pretty universally. So again, Franklin Pierce, number 5. Number 4, you'll recognize him from, of course, your money, if you have any $50 bills on you. This is Mr. U.S. Grant, Ulysses S. Grant. He, of course, was a great general in the Civil War, to be given due credit for going down to Vicksburg and doing what some others could not in winning that port city on the Mississippi River. However, as a president, he was not too good. He had a lot of corruption scandals which hit his presidency, particularly dealing with land deals and railroads. People wound up going to prison over those. Additionally, he, also belongs on this list due to presiding over what was called the Panic of 1873. We don't, talk about panics here in this country very much anymore, but panics were no fun. A little more severe than our modern recessions. This panic in particular led to a 25% decrease in wages for everyone. So think about that, and then also a 14 to 15% unemployment rate. You can bitch at Obama, it's 8% or it's too high. And it's unfortunate people are out of work. he promised us it'd be under 8, those kind of things. 15 isn't any fun either, and that was Mr. Grant's distinction. So, not an effective president. Number 3 is, you may recognize him also, is Mr. James Madison. He's, of course, best known as the father of the Constitution. And people who haven't read much about him may be saying, why is he on this list? He's one of our founding fathers. He's great, isn't he? As a founding father, yes, he's great. As an intellectual, as a thinker, as one of the men most responsible for the philosophical underpinnings of our country and why we're founded and exist the way we do today, Mr. Madison is certainly very, very important and deserves all credit for that. As a president, not too good. And that's why I've given him number 3. Now, his main shortcoming, of course, was his lack of foresight as a military leader. Mr. Madison, we had scaled back the Army quite a bit from the Revolution, had a much smaller force at the time, and we decided to declare war on Great Britain in 1812. And that was partially due to some of the actions his predecessor Jefferson had taken, as far as not taking sides in the Napoleonic Wars over in France and England. But in any event, it was a hotly debated topic, one of the closest vote we've ever had on a war resolution. Came down to the last couple of votes. We did that, and we did it on a country that had a Navy 12 times our size. It's one of the only wars that the U.S. has been in where we were definitively defeated. They completely kicked our tails. And they managed to actually burn down Washington, D.C., the capital, where Madison was residing. He, of course, had to flee, but they managed to burn it down. Now, you can argue, well, maybe you don't like Obama's foreign policy, but he certainly hasn't done anything that resulted in getting the White House burned down to the ground. So that's, its own distinction. We had to basically send James Monroe to the British begging for peace because we were losing every battle that we were fighting, with the exception of the Battle of New Orleans, which Andrew Jackson won, but that was 7 days after peace had already been declared. Just took a lot longer for news to travel in those days. So that's Mr. Madison at number 3. Number 2, this gentleman is Mr. Warren Harding. He was, of course, well known for dying in office, the only one not assassinated besides, Zachary Taylor and William Henry Harrison. He also was famous for screwing around while he was in office on his wife, leading some to speculate that perhaps he was poisoned by his wife. In any event, but long before Bill Clinton, this guy was screwing his secretary too. But that's not really what made him a bad president. What made him a bad president was he was a poor judge of people to put in his cabinet, and apparently had no ability to control them or any oversight, and consequently led one of the most corrupt administrations in this nation's history. Starting off, you may have heard the term the Teapot Dome scandal. This is his Secretary of the Interior, who was taking bribes from about $400,000 from the Consolidated Oil Corporation in order to give them preferential land deals. He was the first cabinet member in history to be sent to prison. But it doesn't stop with him. His Attorney General also took bribes to not prosecute people and look the other way. His prosecutor's assistant, Mr. Jess Smith, during Prohibition, made about $900,000 selling, it's a lot of money in today's terms, selling some bribes to, or selling basically medical permits to bootleggers, pretending that their alcohols were medicinal, allowing them to skirt the law. He actually wound up dying in a gunshot accident or case. But anyway, that's him. And then we also have his Secretary of Veterans Affairs, who was taking bribes and giving bidders preferential treatment, and also allowing them to overcharge us for the services they were providing to veterans. So real swell guy there. And then, of course, his customs clerks also were dirty and corrupt and went to prison. So that's a lot of people going to prison, and he was only president for, less than 3 years. So that's a lot to happen. And did Mr. Harding have any role in that? Did he know about that? Well, we won't know because his wife destroyed all of his papers. So and she said to protect his legacy. So take your own view of that, of exactly what was going on there. But number 2, Warren Harding. This is number 1, for who I believe is actually legitimately the worst president we've ever had in the United States. This is Mr. James Buchanan, and he was the 15th president of the United States. Our only confirmed bachelor president. He was rumored, of course, to be gay. He had a niece who was the presidential hostess. We didn't have a first lady. But he wasn't a bad president because he was gay. He was a bad president because he was spineless, ineffectual, and basically hid from the problems. He was continually warned by all of his generals, including Winfield Scott, that if he did not take action, the South was going to arm themselves and be ready for a civil war. He actually allowed I'm not making this figure up, 1/4 of our federal troops had to surrender in Texas due to being captured while he was asleep at the switch. And essentially allowed, Fort Sumter and other forts to be captured. He had secret agreements with them to not resupply them, and essentially, many people have argued his actions helped to hasten the Civil War, and there's certainly many causes of the Civil War, but his complete lack of leadership certainly didn't help. So he's my number 1 choice for actually legitimately the worst president we've ever had in the United States. The Civil War was no joke. You probably say Obama sucks because maybe Obamacare. I'm assuming, he has added $5 trillion to the national debt. And we can point fingers and all that kind of stuff, but, this is a helpful chart that's from New York Times. This shows, a lot of the $5 trillion that Obama's had to add to the debt were simply the extension of policies in place at the time he took office, which includes $1.4 trillion for the 2 wars we're fighting that perhaps we don't need to be fighting. Actually, you commented on that. And the Bush tax cuts, which were extended, are $1.8 trillion. TARP, the Medicare drug benefit. The stimulus that he passed is only $711 billion, which is still, a lot of money, and maybe he shouldn't have done it. And maybe he should be blamed for continuing these crappy policies. I think he should. But to argue that these are equivalent to having our capital burned down or hastening the Civil War or leading basically just a completely corrupt money for pay-for-play White House, he's not in that category. So Gun Guru, respectfully, and again, I really make this point just because I hear other people saying this. Barack Obama is not legitimately the worst president we've ever had. He may suck, but in a historical perspective, he won't be seen as the worst we've ever had. So respectfully, I disagree, but I do continue to look forward to watching some of your videos, and we'll comment. And if you want to comment on this, I'd appreciate it, and we'll see where the discussion goes. But I do think that hopefully I've offered some historical perspective here. Thank you.